I'm Ellis Martin. Join me right here, right now, on Money Talk Radio for a chat with Daniel Major, the CEO of Goviex Uranium. Goviex trades on the TSX Venture Exchange as GXU, and in the U.S. on the OTC as GVXXF. Goviex is a mineral resource company focused on the exploration and development of uranium properties in Africa. With a substantial resource inventory, Goviex's main objective is to become a major uranium supplier by exploring and developing its key Muntanga Project in Zambia, forecast to be in production in this uranium cycle. Daniel, welcome back to the program, my old friend. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Good to see you.
Good to be seen, and good to see you as well. I've been looking over all of our uranium sponsors that we've had in the past and currently in the market in general, and either there's a fire sale going on somewhere or there's no eyes on the sector right now. Enlighten us. I consider you an expert in the field. What's happening? We were so excited a year ago when we spoke, and now are we still excited?
Oh, probably more so. I think that's the reality. And I think the people like Cameco and ourselves have been saying, focus on what's important. And what's important is the term contract. What's important is the fact that around the world, we have more and more positive statements about nuclear being the core for clean energy and the need to build more and more reactors. That is the big news that's out there. That is a radical change from 18 to 24 months ago. Even the Germans, now they've had the election, are thinking about coming back. Japan came out last week and recommitted to 20% of their future energy from 2030 will be nuclear. This is the country where Fukushima started our problems. Investors have got to look at the big picture. This is a business that runs like a super tanker. It just moves slowly, but it keeps moving inexorably forward. But people are looking at the spot market and panicking. The spot market is down this year, but it's down on almost no volume. And the other thing I'm finding really interesting watching the spot market is that normally you'd sell in £100,000 lots or bigger. We're having lots going through at £50,000. Almost half the trades in the last week were £50,000 lots. They're tiny little lots. Or you've got very small volumes at £50,000 are literally moving the price. It's like somebody trading 100 shares in a company and moving the price. The total volume traded is so small that's going on out there. And the majority of this material is churn between traders. It's not real demand. It's not an end user buying from a producer. It is churn between traders going on out there. So you're watching a price being moved around without any fundamental in there, because the fundamental is seen in that term contract market. And that is holding up nicely at the $80 price. That's where the market's looking. If you look at where the forecasters are going, and people like Trade Tech or UX Consulting, they are both forecasting and telling the utilities that you're going to be seeing $90 to $100 uranium by the end of this year. That is their forecast, because at the end of the day, the supply deficit has not gone away that is out there. We haven't had any new big projects. And as Cameco pointed out, even something like Cigar Lake by 2036 closes. But where is its replacement? That's an £18 million a year producer that needs a replacement to turn up. So that's 10% of the world's market. So people are just watching that. Now, why is there not a lot of action there at the moment? One, because most of the utilities did a lot of work on contracting when we had a lot of uncertainty out there, mainly because of what was going on with Russia and Ukraine. And the squeeze on exports that has impacted very negatively for Kazakhstan. Everything from Kazakhstan has to go somewhere else. It really can't make it into the European or the US market. You've got the Russian suspension agreement that was revised not so long ago anyway, that sees the amount of material that comes out of Russia being reduced from 20% down to 10% by 2028. So the other thing you've seen recently is that while we're looking at spot uranium, people have to look at the other side of our business, which is the conversion price. People are fixating on the spot market, but also that's not the only component in our industry. You have the EUP price. You've got the UF6 conversion price out there as well. They're going up. They're not coming down at all. They've actually been climbing as utilities scrabble to find where they're going to get their enriched uranium from or their UF6 conversion material. As I say, term contract is holding up. So all the fundamentals for our industry are bullish. The US government has changed and it remains bullish nuclear. So I think you're going to see the spot market turn around. If something is tight and there's not a lot of volume, it only needs a concerted buyer to come into it and it will drive it back up again very quickly.
As you know, there's been quite a bit of negotiating going on right now with regard to the war in Ukraine and peace eventually breaking out, which could open up the market there for uranium and in Russia as well. How will that affect the supply and demand issues that have been happening and the squeeze that you referenced earlier?
I don't see it personally having a lot of impact, and I'll tell you why. One, Russia itself does not supply a lot of uranium to the market, physical uranium. It is a big seller of enrichment services. So it contracts to take somebody else's uranium and turn it into EUP and then sends them the EUP. But it doesn't produce the uranium itself. It just provides the enrichment service. There was an excellent presentation last year by UXC at the NEI conference in Kansas City where they talked about Russia. And they said, well, where does Russia stand on uranium? And their analysis was very much Russia is in deficit for uranium. It needs uranium. It has need for its own reactors. It is increasing its capacity of reactors. I think they're forecast another 11 to be built in the next 10, 15 years. It is also fairly aggressively selling reactors around the world, and they have to meet those contracts. So their position on that was Russia actually needs uranium, and it doesn't really sell uranium. It sells an enrichment service. The other part of that discussion, which was what we saw change in the market a lot, was Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan was a big supplier to the West, particularly Europe. And Europe's got a real interesting problem. In 2023, 60% of all European uranium came from Kazakhstan, Russia, and Niger. Well, Iran are not operating in Niger because the government has stopped them doing that. They can't get from Russia and they can't get from Kazakhstan because of what's going on in Ukraine. However, if peace were to break out, all of that material predominantly that was being produced by Kazakhstan has found a new home while we've had the ongoing sanctions. It's estimated about 70% of everything that's produced in Kazakhstan goes straight to China, and the other 30% just goes to Russia. If you suddenly have an outbreak of peace, that flow of uranium that was happening before is going in a completely different direction now and has no reason to turn around and go in a different direction, which means North America, Europe, etc. still has to find its uranium from somewhere else going forward. And you're not going to suddenly have a flood of cheap uranium that's suddenly got to find a home. So again, we're in a supply deficit anyway going forward. The demand side is growing strongly. The supply side is not growing at all, really, because it needs those prices. There's a lot of projects out there that would like to come on, but they need higher prices to justify going to the next stage.
This brings me to Zambia and Goviex. How are you going to fill that supply squeeze?
Well, we're going to be part thereof. We're very excited about what's going on in Zambia. I mean, it's a great country to work in. It's a mining country to start with. I mean, it used to be the world's largest copper producer years ago, but the current government is very keen to see expansion of mineral development. It's currently working with the government of Finland to do a massive geophysics program across the country. Companies like Ivanhoe have now moved in there with their Typhoon system to explore deep down. So there's a massive push forward. But at the same time, they're looking to expand their infrastructure to support mining going forward. So it's not just about exploration, it's actually looking at the infrastructure systems that are there. It's a long-running democratic government, and so we like being there. Our project, Muntanga, is down on the south side near a town called Chirundu, which is the border post into Zimbabwe, then down into South Africa. So really good infrastructure. We've got tarmac roads, we've got power with the Kariba Dam nearby. We've got really good water, easy access to the project. Export route would be through a town called Livingston that then takes you into Namibia, that takes you down to Walvis Bay, which is where all the Namibian uranium gets shipped out of, whether it's going into both the Atlantic coast and or round through to China. So really good place to be. We've just completed the feasibility study and announced the results on that one. Come out with a very strong project at $90 uranium, a $243 million net present value, and an almost 21% IRR at $32 cash cost. So a really solid project there. It will operate for at least 12 years. It's got a lot of exploration upside to it. The thing I really like about that project as well, it's very simple. It is a very simple open pit heap leaching operation. There's no complexity to it. The pits are shallow, easy to operate. Process metallurgy is very straightforward. forward with over 90% recovery on uranium, but very quickly recovering that on a heap with low acid consumption. And Zambia is a country that produces acid, and they're about to get even more because Ivanhoe are building a great big smelter at Kamoa that will produce even more acid for the region. So all those factors that you want to see about a project, location, work perfectly for Muntanga.
Are you going to be a producer? Am I reading that right, by 2028?
That is the plan. So we have already appointed our debt advisory guys, Endeavour. We will file the FS itself in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but we've already highly advanced on our ESIA permitting. So that application, we've done the various other documents before, but the final ESIA document will be filed by the end of Q1 with ZEMA, the Zambian Environmental Management Agency, and we will go through that process. We do have to move a small community, 2 small communities actually, but we're well advanced in those discussions. So the target would be to get all of our permits organized, which is well doable within the Zambian code by the end of the year. And on that basis, if we have the financing and those permits, we can start construction. And it's a relatively straightforward 2-year construction period. That would put us in 2028 first production. The nice thing about the project on a mining side is that within the 4th month of mining, you're already putting uranium on the heap and leaching it out. So it goes to uranium production very quickly as a project.
There's 2 things I want to talk about here. One thing is the power of Endeavour Financial, and the other thing that you mentioned, I can't let it go, is you're moving 2 communities. What are the logistics about that, and how do the communities themselves benefit from being uprooted?
Endeavour, for those that have seen the mining debt market, are exceptionally good at doing what they do, which is finding debt for mining projects, particularly in Africa. That's their skill set. And they were doing a fantastic job for us before at Madaouela, and we had secured LOIs for our debt for Madaouela just before the coup. In fact, the day of the coup, we got a last LOI. This is when we were back at $55 uranium. So very positive. We're very excited to be working with them. On your second question with the community, a large part of what you have to do in this business is work with the communities. You know there's going to be change. We have been actively working with the communities. You have to remember that the people here are pretty well subsistence farmers. Their average income is like $80 a year. We have worked very much alongside them for a long time. We've provided water to the communities. We've provided schools, we've provided clinics. They are looking forward. I have to say, we did a review under the ESIA and had a very positive response from the community on seeing the benefits of development going forward. We are in fairly advanced discussions with them in that process. We have already defined the area of ground that they will move to. We are now in the process of agreeing what each individual party will get as a process of the move. And we have to follow the regulations for IFC, etc. The community and the individual people and the individual groupings within those communities are well protected in that process. And it's covered by Zambian law as well. And it's a process that's well understood. So we have to get the wrap right. It's part of the ESIA approval.
This sounds very good for everything going on with Muntanga in Zambia. Let's talk about Madaouela in Niger, the uranium project there. You've come to some sort of strategic roadmap with the Republic of Niger for that project and moving forward. We need to review that.
Absolutely. Just for those of the background, on July the 4th last year, the government of Niger revoked our licenses there, took the project away from us. We had been operating there, did all the exploration, everything, got it through to bankable feasibility study. We were working on the financing. We were getting ready to start developing the project, and the government decided to, in our view, unlawfully take the license away from us. We reached out to the government, wrote letters of dispute to them, explaining why we were in dispute, and asked to seek an amicable approach. That didn't happen. We decided to go the legal approach, and we filed an application under ICSID courts to basically sue the government. Very soon after we filed the papers with the government, they reached out and asked us if we could talk about finding an amicable approach. So I think this does underline our strong legal position that we had. We are happy that the government has reached out. We now have to find a process to go forward to recover that license in a form that we find acceptable. We were under the 2006 code. The code has changed. We have to make sure that we are comfortable with whatever we get back as a permit, but also we protect our rights because we have a very strong legal position to protect at the same time. So there's a way to go forward here, Ellis, but at least we're now on a roadmap. We are on a road to go somewhere. There's no guarantee we get there, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Well, it's certainly good to hear, and with production happening in Zambia potentially in 2028, I'm not terribly concerned about the future of Goviex. Listen, it's a cheap stock right now. I think you're at 4 cents a share in Canada and 3.2 cents in the U.S. Usually people that look at these charts and look at the roadmap for the future, they see a stock like that and they go, let me just wait until there's an uptick of some sort, or come in at 20 or 30 cents or half a dollar. And really the opportunity potentially is now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, one of the things that we had a look at while we were finishing off the feasibility study was to understand the valuation of other companies around. And when you look at our peer group, the companies that have got a single asset that are out there, like the Namibian projects, etc., they are trading at their market cap equivalent of their net present value at $80 uranium. Well, if you look at the value for Muntanga at $80, it's about $150 million. And we're trading at a $25 million market cap. So even if you put a discount on that, there is a lot of upside here on this project. One of the things that was seen last year, very positive for the uranium stocks, were the uranium stocks that had a potential to get into construction and development. Well, Muntanga has now joined that list very strongly. We've already got the feasibility study out. We can deal with the ESIA relatively straightforwardly this year. We still have to go through the process, but I don't see any issues coming through on that. We've already started the process on the debt side. So what drove uranium stocks last year is exactly where Muntanga is now. As we said at the beginning of this conversation, this short-term downward spiral that people have been seeing on spot uranium, it's a small volume. The fundamentals are still there. Projects like Muntanga have got to get built to meet the growing demand for uranium. So it is a case of watch the space with Goviex. It is very cheap. It's a great opportunity being there, but you got a great project. And then Niger, if we pull it off, it's the icing on the cake. But look at the fundamentals of what is Muntanga, because that's underpinning the whole of Goviex.
Daniel, it's always great to catch up with you. Thank you for this very informative interview. I look forward to speaking with you again in the very near future, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
I've been speaking with Daniel Major, CEO of Goviex Uranium. Goviex trades on the TSX Venture Exchange as GXU and the US on the OTC as GVXXF. The company's website is goviex.com, Goviex.com. I'm Ellis Martin, and this is Money Talk Radio.
Subscribe to Money Talk Radio. It's free. Go right now to ellismartin.com.